This podcast is a Royfield Brown production. Find others on iTunes.
All right. Here I know.
Read him up, read him up.
Hello and welcome to Brown People, the show where I talk exclusively to people of colour, basically to people that look a little bit like me. My name is Royfield Brown. My guest today is Calvin Robinson, a face on GB News. He was born and raised in the East Midlands. He is a man of the cloth and has strident views on liberalism, and he rails against the modern metropolitan elitism, which he says is sweeping Britain. Social justice warriors, critical race theory, are just some of the things which he doesn't like. We're going to talk to him about those today. But tell you what he does like: Brexit and a traditional reading of the Bible.
Doreen Lawrence has said the latest government commissioned report into racial disparity pushes the racism fight back 20 years.
Well, first of all, the report pulls apart many racial disparities that are still prevalent in our society. It absolutely acknowledges that racism is still an issue that needs to be tackled and needs to be addressed.
Cancel culture is a toxic weapon used by the woke mob to cancel free speech.
Calvin Robinson, you're very angry.
I'm not angry at all, very disappointed, actually very suspicious. So that says there's no evidence of these drag queens sexualising children whatsoever.
I must admit, I'm somewhat fascinated by your story. But first off, what I should say is thank you and welcome for coming onto the show. How are you today?
Mr. Brown, I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for the invitation. It's lovely to be. I like that the name of the show cracks me up because obviously it's your surname, but also it's just Brown People.
There you go. You know what? I can't take any credit for it. It's foisted on me. And whenever I say to people, Brown people, they always kind of smile and say, I've got it. It seems to work. When growing up in the East Midlands, were there many other brown people?
Not that many, actually. Increasingly so while I was growing up. But, my dad's family were pretty much the first black family in the town. One of the first, if not the first. The Midlands is still, very different to London, let's say. Mansfield, where I grew up, it's a fairly big town as far as towns go. But living in a town is obviously very different to living in a city, and everyone knows your business, everyone knows each other. So this skin colour played less of a role in my early childhood because I grew up around people that I kind of knew and that knew me as me. But then as you move around, that does become a bit of an issue. So it was very different to when I came to London.
A traditional reading of things would be something like this. You grew up in Mansfield, vast majority of people didn't look like you, some level of racism, alienation. Then you run down to London and see many other people of a similar skin colour. You find your tribe and you live happily ever after. Which bit of that didn't work out?
All of it did. That's exactly what happened.
So is that the end of the interview?
No, but I love that you assumed that it didn't happen. Which part didn't happen? So the kids I grew up with, we all just knew each other from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew each other as each other. And then around middle school, we moved to a different area to get to the better catchment area for better school, because obviously in this country, schools are a postcode lottery. And my mum wanted me to go to the best school we could within a state school system. And then obviously I was new to those people. So then the novelty of my skin colour became an issue. I experienced a fair amount of racism, wasn't pleasant, struggled through it, which gave me one perspective. But then I moved to London, which is very metropolitan, very diverse in the superficial sense, and experienced the other kind of racism. See, I was growing up, I didn't know I didn't know that racism worked both ways. I didn't know it could work every way. I probably would have agreed with the critical race theory idea that only white people can be racist and that kind of thing, until I came to a city and realised that actually everyone's racist. Everyone can be racist, and everyone can certainly become the victim of racism, and everyone can certainly perpetrate it. Up in Mansfield, I was one of the few ethnic minority people, so you could say that ethnic minority people stuck together to some degree, although I'm not saying we're racially segregated, but you know what I mean. Whereas in London, I learned that black people are racist to other black people. That was a novelty to me. There's a whole, a scale of skin colour, and the darker you are, the more you suffer racism compared to what was known as lighties or light skin. And that was never a thing for me. I just thought, black people are black people, and black people would treat each other just as a brother and a sister. I didn't actually realise how bad it could get. And then for me, as a mixed race person coming down, I'd always assumed all of my life that I was black. I didn't realise that mixed race was different to black until black people started telling me, actually, no, you're not black. I was like, oh, okay. So you don't want me as part of this tribe then?
Well,
interesting.
Is it that people don't want you, but people see there is a nuanced difference? And then, but you are completely right. It's when people say things like the black community, I'm like, that's pretty diverse. Like within the UK, you fundamentally have two big tribes, let alone three. You have people with mixed heritage like you. But then you have, are you of Caribbean origin or are you of African origin? And there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, and that massively plays out in representative politics. If you look at the people, the black folks who are in the Tory government, almost exclusively of African origin. It's people of Caribbean origin who are on the other side of the aisle, so to speak. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's cultural. I think it's not racial, it's cultural. And that's what the fundamental problem is, actually. And we often look at the surface level and think it's about black and white. It's not about black and white, it's about culture. And, you know, my time in school showed me this massively, because black African kids are doing really, really well. They're exceeding pretty much every other demographic. They're getting better results, better chance of getting into university, all of that stuff. But black Caribbean kids are near the bottom of the league tables. You know, they're on the same level as white working class British kids. The only people doing worse are Romani gypsies, which showed me that actually
people of Pakistani and Bangladeshi origin as well. But yeah.
And people often say, oh, our education system's racist. I'm like, okay, is it racist? Because I don't know many people that are racist that treat black Caribbean people one way and black African people another way, other than black people, right? So, you know, black Caribbeans treat Africans a certain way and Africans treat Caribbeans a certain way. But white racist or any other racist sees a black person. If they're racist towards black people, they're racist towards black people. They will not differentiate. I've not met one that would differentiate in that way. So it shows me that actually it's cultural. When I've digged into this, I found that Africans tend to, I'm generalizing here, tend to still have small c conservative values of social mobility, aspiration. Like, you will work hard, you will make something of your life, you will make a success of your life, right? Because they are newer immigrants, generally speaking. Caribbean people, the reason that Caribbean people are on the same level in the league tables as white working class British people is because they've been here longer and they've socially integrated. And so they have exactly the same social issues as white working class Brits. It's the class system that is dividing people at the moment.
But then what made you so different? Because you managed to throw off those cultural shackles, so to speak.
Well, I suppose that's any generalization. It's you can either go along with it or you can break away from it. And you mentioned, like, did I find a tribe? I did. So in university, I had black friends, Chinese friends, white friends. My friendship group was very mixed because we centered around the things that unite us. And it wasn't our skin color, it was other things. So I think it was important for me not to get nailed down by my skin color and focus on things that either unite me with other people or give me a way to see beyond my skin color, because I honestly do think it's one of the least interesting things about me, and it's something that I can't change. I didn't choose, so it's neither good nor bad, it just is.
When I look at some of your pronouncements, watch you on YouTube, I think it was at the Oxford Debate and Society. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
You seem to be very black and white, and that's not at all a pun. Not at all a pun. I realised as soon as I was saying it. And you've worked in technology. Now, it's a fascinating story that you have. You worked in technology. People who are kind of coders, etc., and understand technology generally are of that kind of right libertarian credo, and do see the world in very much binary. It's like ones and zeros. You can fix anything kind of by technology. And do you think that that's actually helped inform your mindset, that it's either one thing or another?
No, I don't. So I'm not a libertarian, and I don't see the world in binary. Some issues are black and white, but most issues have nuance to them. So I don't subscribe to most of those things you just said. I just think the thing that gets people stuck, right, when we're talking about color, is when we're fixated on it. And what I mean by that is, quite often within this so-called black community that you mentioned, black people will keep black people down. And what I mean by that is people who subscribe to, whether they believe in critical race theory or even know about critical race theory, but people that subscribe to that kind of way of thinking, that will say certain things are whiteness and certain things are blackness, often put good things in the box of whiteness and bad things in the box of blackness. Now, I think that's quite derogatory, because I think any individual can, for example, keep time. Any individual can speak properly. Any individual can learn well, right? These are all things that anyone can do if they set their mind to them. They're not things that only white people can do and black people can't do. However, the moment you do these things, you'll find white people saying, you're breaking free from your class, you're a race traitor or something. And then you find black people saying, actually, no, yeah, you are a race traitor. You're not perpetuating blackness. And it's like, okay, so you want me to be late. You want me to speak incorrectly. You don't want me to succeed. You're like, why is success something that black people can't achieve? And this comes from the white racist as well as the black.
I'd agree with some elements of that. I think there is definitely a be your authentic self, okay, which can lead people to be sloppy professionally. But also, it leads people to talk about their own experience without listening to other people's experience, because I'm just being authentic. This is just me type of thing, which then does go and separate us. But I would slightly question whether in 2023 you cannot be black and speak in received British, and people wouldn't give you a double take. There is a question about code switching to be able to talk about rice and peas and Yemen, but I think that's slightly behind us. I really do. But you know what? We don't have to continually talk about reds. I know it's called brown people, but it's just people that come onto my podcast. But I'm fascinated as to how your strident right-wing views actually were formed, and how you might think that they inform how people deal with you. So when did you get this calling to back to the other side, so to speak?
Oh, okay. So I don't think my views are strident right-wing. I think my views are small c conservative, which is what the vast majority of people in this country are. But
you say small c conservative. Watching that YouTube video with you at Oxford. Nah.
Which one was?
Well, you were taking a very traditional, literal view of the Bible and about views around homosexuality. Wherever the Overton window actually is, and whether it has moved and swung away from people that have those views, and whether it should have, it has. And for you to say what you said then doesn't put you in a kind of one nation, cuddly Tory view. You are tub thumping, fire and brimstone.
I disagree. I think the large C Conservative Party has gone majorly liberal, and our metropolitan areas, our major cities, and our politicians and our mainstream media has gone quite liberal, which is why people often confuse it with being left-wing, but it's not. It is liberal. It's not right or left, it's liberal. And my views are small c conservative, and I get my views from my faith. My faith forms my views, whether it's my politics or my theology or whatever, my worldview. That's where I try to take it from, because that's the whole point of being a Christian. It's like a guidebook on how to live a good life.
If I can't see the humanity in that statement, that is because I've been somewhat brainwashed by liberalism.
From which statement would you say lacks
humanity?
humanity?
You said that the Bible is really clear. Marriage is between a man and a woman. And
So pause on that one. Pause on that one. That's a good place to start. So marriage is between a man and a woman. Like, if anyone finds that offensive or that jars anyone in any way, that tells me that they've gone so far in the lot, because up until like 5 minutes ago, that was perceived normal across pretty much all of the world. That's what marriage was. It's the lifelong union between one man and one woman. It's heterosexual, it's monogamous, and it's for the purposes of procreation. It's for starting a family, it's for worshipping God. You can take the religious angle out of it if you want, but that's what marriage was. And now, as of the last few years, it's become something that, it's anyone can do it. But why? That's the thing that's changed. So my belief hasn't changed. And the fundamental Christian view that's been around for 2,000 years, the Jewish view that's been around for 4,000 to 6,000 years, like that hasn't changed.
Can we not look at some of the tenets of the Bible and say that the Bible was written, whether it is the New Testament, which is, let's say, 2,000 years ago, right? Or, as you said, the Torah, the Talmud, whatever, which is going to be older than that. These documents were written in their time, but they have a deeper truth. The Bible condones slavery. It doesn't advocate that we go out and enslave people. No, but it takes it as a given that slavery exists. It does. But it doesn't say go out and enslave, right? And we would not take that as a given today. We see that as abhorrent.
No, slavery does exist.
But we see it as abhorrent, as opposed to a state of being. The Bible says that slavery is a state of being, in effect. Okay? So I could turn around and say credo of the living tacitly is condoning something which is abhorrent. It's been abhorrent for the last 200 years throughout the world.
It's a misunderstanding, because that's not what it's about. The Bible is a message to say to move beyond that, beyond the world, because the world is corrupt and fallen and broken, and to move towards something good and holy. And it teaches us that in Acts and Galatians, when it says there is neither Jew nor Greek because we're all one in Christ. It says move away from these boundaries that you've created for yourselves and move towards your unity in God. That's what we're supposed to do. It's not saying continuous slavery. It's saying slavery exists and it's a bad thing. We shouldn't be doing it. And it's the same thing with, you've skipped past the marriage thing, but straight away, when I've said that marriage is between one man and one woman, you're seeing a judgment call on a relationship that's not just a man and a woman. So you're inserting something into it that I haven't.
No. I was making a more fundamental point, is that the document, which looks at the history of the Jewish people out of captivity, was written for a people, and it was written within the context of the time, with specific cultural and societal mores. And I don't see that why 2,000, 4,000, how many years ago, later, we can't look at the tenets of forgiveness, love, and acceptance and look at that as opposed to some of the specific things.
I'll tell you what, because Jesus didn't say, make it up as you go along. He didn't say, find a way to be forgiving and loveful. He said, this is the way. He said, he is the way, the truth, and the life. And he came at a certain time on purpose, and he gave us that context on purpose. He didn't say, this is for now, but in the future, you do your own thing. He said, this is the way.
But why is it that we kosher food? There was a change between that in the Bible. At one point, there's certain things which were seen as being unclean. And then...
But he addressed that. We haven't changed that since he came. He changed that. He changed the law. He came to fulfill the law. So he didn't say, after me, go and make things up, because that would make gods of ourselves. If we say, actually, I think we have a better way of looking at love now than what we did when the Bible was around. Because what that's saying is the Bible is not the word of God. It's saying Jesus Christ is not the word of God. It's saying, I am better than God. I know better than God. I can make it up because what he said is no longer relevant to me in my modern day life. That's idolatry.
So your reading of the Bible, is that the reason why you left the Church of England?
Not because of my reading of the Bible, because of the direction the Church of England is going away from the Bible. It's a great shame to see, the institution has been taken over by so many liberals. It's just good old-fashioned entryism. And what started a few years ago has rapidly escalated, and now we're seeing the point that the church is entering apostasy, and it's a great shame. It's a sadness.
I might be on the pale. I'm one of those liberals.
It depends on what you mean. Do you believe that we should do away with God's word and just make it up as we go along?
I think God's word is pretty cool, to be honest with you. I think that love, forgiveness, charity, etc.
So define love.
Brahms, who's interviewing who here? Love, for me, love is a deep acceptance. So maybe I said the same thing twice. I said the same thing twice.
So that's the problem. You're defining love yourself. That's not how God defines love. So that's you making up your own religion, essentially. Love isn't an acceptance at all.
Well, I'm not making up a religion here. It's just a way of living, and you
are, because you're making up your own values, right? God said that love is sacrificial. Love is willing the good of the other. He loves us despite our sins. He doesn't affirm them. He doesn't accept them. Not at all.
Well, I would say, though, that for me, love in that way and being slightly sacrificial is the fact that my view of politics and society is very much communitarian as opposed to individualistic, and we have a responsibility to the whole. So hence, before you and I got onto the mic here, well, we were on mic, I didn't hit record, I talked about a homeless issue in San Francisco. And that profoundly disturbs me. And that is because I believe in community. And I am living in a country which is slightly skewed the other side, which believes in individuality.
Yeah. But it's not good. Collectivism is not good, and individualism is not good. The Christian faith teaches us communitarianism in the middle. I moved to San Francisco in 2011, I couldn't deal with it. I thought the richest people in the world are here, and some of the poorest people in the world are here. Like, I've not seen as much poverty in the Western world as I've seen in San Francisco. It's on every single street corner. Like, how can you have such a dichotomy? It doesn't make any sense. People generally don't seem to care, and it was too much. I couldn't bear it.
What the liberal Californians in San Francisco need is a good dose of the Bible and some right-wing politics.
Because you can be left-wing communitarian, you can be old-fashioned socialist or a modern-day conservative. It doesn't really matter. It's the willing the good of the other. It's that charity, and you're right. It is the same word. Charity is the biblical word for love. It's because it is about self-giving. It's not about what we receive, and it's not about acceptance or affirmation or inclusivity.
So we're both communitarians, right? We're both Midlanders. We have loads of things in common, you and I. We've both lived in London, San Francisco, but we view the world really differently. Where does communitarianism stop for you? For me, I see it going up and down the food chain, so to speak, politically. I really do believe that Britain is stronger by having close links with its neighbours. So I'm all for the European Union. And as a student of history, I understood guiding reason for that union was because of world wars. We needed to...
No, it wasn't.
It was one of the strong guiding ethos in the 1950s.
You could talk about NATO or the UN, you could talk about those kind of things being a result of that and that bond, but the EU started out as a trade group, right? It was
coal and steel.
It was nothing to do with creating bonds or anything like that. It was just about money. It was capitalism. And it's been the creeping effect of putting politics into it over the years that actually it's become a federalized system where each state is subservient to the greater, which is essentially the United States of Europe. Like, the countries that are properly invested in the EU at this point are no longer sovereign nations. They don't get to...
But that's not true, though, is it? You can't tell me that Germany's not a sovereign nation.
German people don't get to elect the representatives that are creating the laws in their country. That's the issue. And for all the countries, and especially there's a hierarchy, so Germany gets a lot more independence and say and sovereignty than countries such as Greece. And that, again, is, you could almost call that colonialism, because what's happening there is that the poorer country is having to go with the will of the richer country.
Now we are disagreeing, and maybe this is a good podcast, because what people want is a good intellectual disagreement.
Europe's fantastic. Love Europe. I go there all the time. I just don't want to be part of the United States of Europe.
All right. At what point are we going to see the benefits of Brexit?
We already have.
What's that? So
this is the thing.
Slowest economy, in terms of growth out of the G20.
Yeah.
Nothing at all to do with the fact that we've now put a trading tariff between ourselves and our largest trading partner.
That is a difference in worldviews right there. So when you look for a result of Brexit, you're looking for an economic boost, which there may be or may not be. That isn't why I voted for Brexit. I didn't expect an economic boost. Thought, actually, a downward spiral for a while, actually, as a result.
But none of you Brexiteers ever said that, though.
We did all the time.
Not true.
All the time.
Not true.
It is true.
Not true.
But people hear what they want to hear. So when I fought for Brexit, I fought for it for several reasons. 1, control of our borders. 2, national sovereignty. 3, democracy. But lots of reasons that I've already seen the benefits of.
But we had all of those things, didn't we? And by the way, we had 45,000 people come on boats last year. So where's the control of our borders? I never understood. Most EU countries have a rule that you can come over and work, but if you don't, within 6 months, if you don't have work, you got to go back. So this whole thing about controlling borders, we had that within the auspices of the EU.
We had a different way of interpreting that. We have a very literalist interpretation of the law. We don't sway from it. This is an example of why we are getting nailed by the ECHR, and other countries actually manage to find a way to work around that, because other countries bend international law in different ways.
So we could have had control of our borders, is my case in point. So you've admitted that.
No, all right. But we don't.
And we've had an economic downturn.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So we've made ourselves poorer. We've given away sovereignty.
You can't put a price on freedom. We haven't given away sovereignty.
We gave away, at least for a period, sovereignty to a constituent part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We did. We talked about being, this big, bold Britain, when actually, for a period, we drew a line up the Irish Sea. Brexiteers are little Englanders.
That's derogatory. No, that's not the truth at all. Because you're saying, like, they don't agree with me, so I have to put them down.
If that came over as a pejorative, no, to call somebody a little Englander is a pejorative, and I'm sorry. As the host of this podcast, I'm genial, I'd like to be welcoming, and I'm really enjoying going at it with you with the cut and thrust. Brexit is an English project, isn't it?
I disagree. I think I'm a massive unionist. I believe in the union. I don't think Northern Ireland will leave. I don't think Scotland will leave. I don't want them to leave. And I think I'll fight hard to show the positives of being a union together. That's a union I do believe in. The EU is a union I did not believe in. And I think we have that democratic right to vote, and we made that decision. And I think, for me personally, we're seeing the benefits and we're seeing the results. And that means, yes, we're seeing more immigration. I don't want more immigration. I want caps on immigration. But now it's our responsibility. Now it's our choice to vote for the party that we think will deliver something that we want. And it's our politicians that are failing us. It's not politicians in a foreign country that we have no say over. That's the major difference for me. That's where the freedom is. That's where the sovereignty is.
What are British values?
Christian values.
Wait a minute. So American values are British values?
I mean, American values came from British values, absolutely. Most of the first states in the United States of America were Christian states, explicitly Christian states. And when the United States was constituted, the idea, well, there was an assumption there that they will be Christian but free, in means that anyone can celebrate any religion they choose to and worship any religion they choose to. So they had that individual freedom. But there has always been the assumption there that there is a Christian God, and it's implicit throughout all of their laws and regulations.
See, for me, British values are all about kind of tolerance. One of the things which I always kind of remark on when I bring people to London for the first time, friends, or whatever, come to London for the first time, and I'll drive around, I'll give them a little bit of a tour. They're always amazed as to how beautiful London actually truly is.
It's a great place.
And its diversity, however you want to call diversity, London has it in spades. But if you then just peel those superficial things away and you look at the amount of political thinkers, refugees, freedom fighters, that in the 19th century, early 20th century came to London, that's because of British tolerance.
Right, so the word tolerance is quite dangerous there, but I'll get into that. But this isn't British values, this is Blairism, right? This is the multicultural project, and that's very different to British values.
Blair's 1997, I'm talking about the fact that Louis Kossuth, Hungarian freedom fighter and patriot, came in the mid-19th century. Why did he come here?
Very good question. But I mean, I don't know that history, so maybe you can tell me. But my point is that tolerance is a British value in the terms of tolerance of people of different faiths and not. That's a key value, but it's a very specific type of tolerance. And we've got those three values that Michael Gove had to dig up because they had to try and describe it. But I don't think British values are tangible in that way. It doesn't make much sense to us to pin it down in a way that, the US has a written constitution. We don't. We're not that kind of nation. But if you say tolerance is a value, just tolerance on itself, would you tolerate Hitler? Would you tolerate a paedophile?
There's guardrails to tolerance. Don't get me wrong.
So who draws them and where?
They're defined by each society generationally, but they have tenets. We take on tenets from the past, which bind our worldview and give us our social cohesion. So don't get me wrong, right? Tolerance, as I define it, and this is a personal, but I think it's informed by the collective here, isn't if you believe that one human being is inherently better than another, right? I'm not tolerant for that. We do need to sign up some basic tenets so that Hitler's out. Yeah, my tolerance does come within certain bounds, and bounds which allows us all to sign up to the right for us to practice our own religion, our own economic and societal path, as long as it doesn't impinge on others and doesn't dehumanize others. And I think...
Well, that's the problem, because at the moment, it does seem to be that the vocal minorities see tolerance as the core British value, but it's tolerance of modernity. It's not tolerance of our heritage. And to put that into an example, if someone believes that they can change gender, that belief should be tolerated. If someone doesn't believe that, that belief is not tolerated.
This wouldn't mean that you are beyond the pale. I might think that you're wrong, but I will still converse with you, entreat with you, and I wouldn't say that you are beyond the pale because to that point, if I looked at what happened in Qatar at the World Cup, the fact that many liberal institutions were castigating Qatar for, let's put its working practices to one side. So if we put its working practices to one side, because I think that's totally abhorrent, but they are pretty moderate by the standards of the region, but I think they're wrong. Okay? And I think the world had every reason to say the way that you treat immigrant workers is wrong. And if ever there was an example of sport at least having an effect on politics, it did there, because they changed. They became a little bit more moderate. They said, no, these workers can actually have passports, etc., etc.
No, I mean, you make some good points. It is a form of colonialism, but it comes from the assumption that we are right and we are better. That's always
absolutely.
I don't go to countries like Qatar because I don't support their values. I wouldn't want to be there. But if I did go there, I would be expected to live within their values. And that means, dressing modestly and not being a log, a lout, and, drunk in public and all those kinds of things. But we would see that as backwards in this country. And I'm thinking, well, is it? Why is that backwards? What is backwards about not being drunk in public? What is backwards about dressing modestly? Actually, they have some things right as well as having lots of things wrong. So they should be left to create their own value system just as we should be left to create ours. But the problem is we don't do that anymore. We don't say these are our values. If you come into Britain, subscribe to our values. You say, yeah, come to our country, bring your own values, and we'll take on board your values.
But isn't that an inherent strength of Britain, that we know that
it's our weakness?
Really?
Yeah. Because unless you identify your values and say, this is what we believe here, you're all welcome. You can be as welcome as you want. You can say, have no borders, whatever. Anyone can come here if you want to. That's not something I believe in, but if you wanted to. However, when you come here, you become British, you become one of us. That's great. But these are British values. Unless you say what British values are in the way that, whether it's tangible or not, and you expect people to take them on board, unless you do that, you lose them. If I was to go and live in Japan, I'd be expected to bow when I see people instead of shaking hands. I'd be expected to dress in a certain way and speak Japanese, right? If people come to Britain...
People come to Britain and we expect them to drink tea. Isn't that the same thing?
We don't expect them to drink tea at all, no. Of course we don't. There's no expectation there.
Got to drive on the left side of the road. Whinge about the BBC.
Wales went to shake someone's hand the other day and he refused to shake her hand because it's not in his culture. Like, it is in our culture to shake people's hands. If I was in Japan, I'd nod. If I'm in England, I'll shake a hand. Like, there are certain societal norms that we would expect in our culture to be polite and to be, for good etiquette.
Whinging about the BBC. Can't get more British than that.
Yeah, it's good.
You like to have a bit of a pop at the BBC, don't you?
I do. Only because I care about it, and I think it's gone downhill tremendously. It used to be our soft power. The BBC World Service is still pretty good, relatively speaking, but mainstream BBC content is just so, it's woke, to use the word. It's lecturing the British people on how they should think and what they should think is from that metropolitan liberal elite perspective. It's like, why can't you just produce good entertainment or good educational services? Why do you have to lecture and sneer? Who wants that?
I'll tell you one thing I always noticed about the time when I used to go to the BBC. A good friend of mine, presenter there, used to go and meet her. In London, you see a lot of people of colour on the reception desk. You then work into the newsroom, and I'm not saying you don't see any people of colour, but it's vastly different.
Well, you do on the screen. People of colour are massively overrepresented on the screen. I think we make up, 14% of the population and over 25% of on-screen talent?
Well, it's a little bit higher now, that last census. It's about 18%. And the truth of the matter is, out of that 18% of Brits who are non-white, 96% of them live in England. So, you can go to Scotland, Northern Ireland. You're not seeing a person of colour in Northern Ireland. It's just don't exist. They're all in England. What else should we talk about before we go? I've enjoyed this. This has been great.
Yeah. I think, we found a lot of common ground, and that's what's important, in that we can disagree on loads of things, but still find loads of things in common. And that's what's becoming a rarity. We mentioned before we came on air that people are living in their tribes now. I think that's quite sad, because diversity for me is experiencing people of different beliefs and different opinions. It's not about superficial diversity of how we look. It's about how we feel and what we think. And we used to live in communities with people that may be older or younger than us or different sex, but also different backgrounds and think different things and have different perspectives. And we don't operate in our communities anymore. We create our own communities. We silo ourselves off. And I find that all quite sad.
Yeah. We are singing for the same hymn sheet now, which is somewhat apropos with my next question, which is your most successful pulpit? Is it GB News or is it the pulpit in the church?
Well, they have different success criteria. I suppose not, maybe, because it's not about audience size. In the church is obviously a lot smaller, so I reach fewer people. But it doesn't matter if I reach only one person. That could be the target for that day. I am a tool to be used by God to get his word out there. So that people can hear his good news. So it doesn't matter how many people hear his good news as long as it's reaching them, right? So the room could be full of thousands of people and maybe only one person hears it, or it only touches one person's heart. That would be a success. On the TV, obviously a much larger audience, but I suppose it is quite similar in that I'm not necessarily preaching the gospel on TV, but I'm trying to speak his truth. And maybe I'm not converting people, but only Christ can convert people. We lead people to Christ. What I'm trying to do on the TV is give people encouragement to let them know actually it is okay to be Christian in a Christian country. It's okay to have small c conservative views, because most of us do. It's okay to be you, and you don't have to be ashamed of that or embarrassed of that. You don't have to let people shut you down because they're vocal minority. The woke mob will try to cancel you, but don't accept it.
I'm not trying to cancel you. I'm just glad you're up. Well, I think
that's interesting, because I didn't say you. I said the woke mob.
Yeah, no, but he's woke. Just as I said, Little Englander, and then I stepped back, appreciating that as a pejorative. That's never said as a way to elevate, to call somebody Little Englander.
Yeah.
When people say woke, and definitely put the word mob, you're denigrating a school of thought.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, I would sign up to that. As somebody who loves history, I know that history is an art, not a science. There are some things which we can take as an absolute. What was the date of the Battle of Hastings? 1066. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what were the effects of that Norman invasion? Then that's an art. You can deliver, and we can have different views on that. And for me, when people go, critical race theory, dreadful, right? I go, how bad is it when, as somebody who loves history, I know that there is more than one view and take on history. And for me, all this is doing is saying there's another way of viewing how other peoples have seen events. Now, you can take that on board. You can say that it's more important than the traditional view of history that we've been taught. I think the two things can sit and run a parallel with each other. And there isn't really a problem, just to acknowledge that some people, some countries have a different view of the sequence of events.
I wouldn't class you as part of that woke mob, because the woke mob are saying, we have a better view now, and we don't want to accept any other view, and they would cancel people that do have another view. Look at what's happening with J.K. Rowling, that kind of thing, or Professor Kathleen Stock. It's like, if you do not subscribe to our worldview, we will remove you from your job, we will hound you, we will send death threats. You must believe what I believe, because what I believe is better than what you believe. That's not tolerance. The woke mob isn't tolerant. The woke mob is fascist, and they call themselves quite often the anti-fascists. They are scary.
But there's a lot of intolerance on the other end, isn't there? I'm against extremism. The extremism that I preach is actually moderation and tolerance and love. And I always give people, at least to start off with, the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's good charity.
Look at us in violent agreement yet again. So you can love somebody who's woke.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't class you as woke, but I don't have I do have a problem with the woke. I was going to say I don't have a problem with them, they have a problem with me, but I do have a problem with them because their worldview is one that does not allow for mine. I think there should be room, like you've said, for multiple different perspectives. Otherwise, we get into totalitarian neighborhoods.
Absolutely. People like you and I, who come from different political traditions, need to keep breaking bread with each other, don't we? We need to keep on a talk.
Modeling best practice.
Absolutely. We can agree on this. So far, there's been no economic upside to Brexit. We've got more immigration than we ever had before. We have skills shortages in our key industries because highly skilled Europeans have gone away. At least we can agree that so far, apart from a fuzzy feeling because we've got the right coloured passports, the benefits of Brexit haven't been realised yet. At least we can agree on...
Symptomatic.
Let's just agree on that, because we've agreed on just about everything else. Or at least we've agreed...
Brexit is a worldview as well. It is a worldview. Like, you either look at it from a Leaver or a Remainer perspective. Like, when you say we've got a skills shortage, what I see there is a problem that needs solving, and that we need to train up more British workers. We need to get more people into work. We need to help people in different ways. I don't think, we need to open the borders. So I don't see the problem in the same way that you see it.
If we're going to train up British workers, and I agree with that, by the way, it takes time. Whereas we made a decision which gave us at least and at best a short-term deficit industrially, economically.
Hey, if that's the price to pay for freedom, I'm happy to pay it.
Goodness, you sound like an American. You don't even sound like a Brit. That's such a thing an American would say. It's the price for freedom.
It's not just Americans that care about freedom.
No, but phrased in that way. If that's the price of freedom, and then they start, rooting and tooting and shooting off their guns, and there's there's 20,000 of them that die at the wrong end of a gun annually, and you'll say, in Britain it's about like 200, and they'll say, if that's the price of freedom, and I go, but are you saying that us Brits are not free?
Yeah, we are less free than they.
Wait on a minute. We're just at Brexit. You should be as happy as Larry. We're as free as we can
I'm
ever
happy
be.
with Brexit, but Americans are freer.
Because they have guns?
And their Second and First Amendments, absolutely.
Right. So you want us to have the US Second Amendment so we can have guns?
I'm not saying I want us to have it. I'm saying they are freer than we are.
Wow. But what about responsibilities? We talked about communitarianism, and I thought we agreed on that you have a social responsibility. If you're going to have...
Absolutely.
If you're going to have in your possession, in your home, a weapon...
it's not just a weapon, it's a defense mechanism. And they're handled very poorly in America, but Israel handles it a lot better. There are countries that have liberal gun laws that don't have the instances that America has.
Calvin, I thought we were getting to a place where we only had one point of disagreement.
The Bible said, if you own a sword, if you don't own a sword, sell your clothes and go buy a sword. The Bible tells you that. That was for that day. We don't have swords these days, we have guns. I think it's important in America for a family to own a gun to protect their family, or for a father to own a gun.
But I thought you believed in the literal reading of the Bible. So,
I don't know.
We should...
Who said that? I don't believe that there is a literal reading or a metaphorical reading. I believe in the Bible. I don't think you can read it literally or not literally. It's just the Bible. It just is.
But it said, if you don't own a sword, go get a sword. Is what you just said.
That's not saying there aren't allegories. That is not saying that the vast majority of the Old Testament has myths and legends in it. It's not to say everything is the same writing style. There are many writing styles in the Bible, but Christ's message from sell your clothes and go buy a sword can only be taken. How would you take that message?
Well, I don't know. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. In other words, just pay your taxes and shut up.
That's a different message.
No, but I'm just saying. We can pick out the little bits which agree with our worldview or not, and
we should follow the whole thing.
Right. There are a few contradictions in the Bible.
There are no contradictions in the Bible. It's infallible.
Wow.
The whole thing is God-breathed. It can't contradict itself.
When you invite me on your show, Kelvin Robinson, we need to...
in London.
End of the month, 28th.
Oh, hit me up.
Will do. Calvin Robinson, thank you for coming on to Brown People.
I just love the casual racism of your name, the name of your show.
No, it's not even casual. It's overt. You know what I mean? It's overt. You know, I'm segregating the people that can and cannot come on to the show.
So you'd never have a white person on here?
Absolutely would. Absolutely would. That's the great thing about the title, that you can read into it what you want. These are just people who are my people who I want to talk with.
Yeah.
There you go. Right, I'm going to see you at some point in April. We're going to have to continue this ding dong on GB News. Calvin Morrison, thank you for coming on to Brown People. You've been a most awesome guest. I really enjoyed speaking to you. And also, I like the fact you kind of admitted that Brexit has not really gone to plan.
That is not what I said.